This morning you chose what's for breakfast, to commute to work, and maybe even to grab a cup of joe to complete your morning routine before sitting at your desk to begin your day. And if anyone asked you why you do what you do, you'd probably take a guess and say, well, because I wanted to. Okay, maybe not many of us are always positive Polly about working for the man every night and day, but at the core, people seem to do what they want to do when they want to. But when it comes to considering why we do things collectively, let's take on the sciences to really get an understanding of how the elite in our society play a heavy hand in why we do what we do. We'll be referencing information and visuals from two documentaries, The Century of Self, made in 2002, and Manufacturing Consent, Noam Chomsky and the Media. And you remember this guy, right? Yeah, good old Sigmund Freud. He was a smart guy. In fact, he was known as the father of psychoanalysis, although he pretty much hated humans. I guess you can't spell psychoanalysis without psycho. But we're not going to talk about that guy. Instead, we're going to introduce a lesser known but still powerful dude of his time, Mr. Edward Bernays, who was actually Freud's nephew, born November 22nd, 1891 in Austria, and is probably a Scorpio. Whatever that means to you, Bernays was the pioneer behind applying his Uncle Freud's psychoanalysis concepts to big business, media, government, and even democracy. Ever wondered if there were secret groups of power players who always have meetings about the future of the country like a bunch of mobsters? Well, that actually happened. In 1914, Bernays had been a press agent in America. Fascinated with his uncle's work, he too had the belief that humans held irrational forces that lived in the subconscious and was very dangerous. This meant we were unstable and a wayward herd that ultimately required mass population control by, guess who? The elite. This idea sat well with big business, especially after Bernays' plan to get women to smoke. But let's rewind. In a video interview in 1991, he said, when I came back to the U.S., I decided that if you could use propaganda for war, you can use it for peace. And propaganda got to be a bad word because of the chairman using it. That new word was public relations. In his first attempts to manipulate the subconscious of the people to make money, he was asked by George Hill, president of the Tobacco Corporation, to find a way to get women to smoke. At the time, it wasn't a good look for women to take a toke from the phallic-shaped cigarettes. I mean, what lady would want to be seen with this long round thing in her mouth? Bernays became the brains behind an elaborate publicity stunt at the New York Easter Parade. A bunch of debutantes were paid to hide cigarettes under their dresses, and upon Bernays' cue, they pulled out the doobie and smoked. Bernays played both sides and fed the press a byline they wouldn't pass up: torches of freedom. Apparently some suffragettes were lighting up in protest. We can see today how effective that stunt was. Bernays' career flourished with many big business clients, including President Coolidge. This marked the beginning of a dirty dance between politics and public relations. He utilized product placement and cross-promotion with clients. He even tried to get his uncle to write for Cosmo magazine, which is another one of Bernays' elite clients. Freud, however, still hating humans, promptly refused. Still, Freud's writings on the dangerous forces just waiting to burst from our human skins that could be triggered at any moment were popular in America among intellectuals and journalists. But not in a good way, though. They were scared out of their wits about it. It could obliterate the government, and no, we can't have that, right? Political writer Walter Lippmann believed that if what Freud said was true, then the masses needed to be controlled by a new elite who enforced a new vision of democracy. Now, democracy is supposed to be the people getting their voice heard, not a group of elites telling you what to do with mind control. Still, wars and revolts were all the proof they needed to know that humans innately were a danger to themselves and others. We just don't know how to make a proper decision. So, by exploiting desires and fears, companies and those with special interests placated the public with products they didn't need, thus creating a consumer mindset and suppressing this threatening subconscious. The 1929 stock market crash, however, prevented people from buying things they didn't need and halted Bernays' blooming career. Still, Freudian beliefs passed on. Anna, Freud's daughter, believed in the strength of the people. She believed that we could overcome these dangerous forces within by using psychotherapy and psychiatrics that actually did not work. She opened the door for electroconvulsive therapy and CIA brainwashing experiments. What a gal. And for many years, the psychiatric field kept trying to fix people by means of control. Take Marilyn Monroe for an example. A follower of Anna Freud's methods of conformity tried to fix the starlet's feelings of despair. We all know how that ended. Her suicide shook the psychoanalysis field with the question whether this field was designed to constrain people or if it truly benefited them. Eventually, someone figured out that the reason they may be so prone to violence is because of the people trying to control them. Herbert Marcuse suggested that empty prosperity from consumerism caused a sort of schizophrenic mindset. From old Chevy commercials that make married men think of mistresses to the public thinking of voting for the next president, Freudian concepts have played a big part in marketing, media, and politics. Fast forwarding to the 60s, we meet Noam Chomsky. You may have heard of this guy. He's a professor turned political activist and loves to root for the underdog. He didn't quite agree with Freudian methods of manipulating public opinion. Being a bookworm, he began his career focusing on how language and words play a major part in how we are coerced and controlled. Though both Bernays and Chomsky agree to use propaganda, Chomsky chose to use it to inform people about the people pulling the strings. He spoke often on how democracy meant free access to information and was something of a rebel. The media is supposed to speak to freedom of speech, but what happens when what we think is the view of the public is actually the views of a private business and their hidden agenda? If we follow the paper trail, we'll find oligopolies in media. This means there are a few companies who own most of the industry. This was true then and even more so now. Bernays and his clients believed it was up to the elite, it was up to them, to take on the responsibility of creating the conditions of a more rational society. Chomsky's ideas challenged Walter Lippmann's idea of manufacturing consent as a form of control. Chomsky preferred to use propaganda to speak to the majority of the population who were the followers. Still, as political activist and professor, he did know methods and realities of the 20% that were not actually exposed to the general population. He was so radical that he was a person of interest to the FBI next to the Black Panthers, even though he was said to, quote, arguably be the most intellectual mind in that time. When you consider quotes like, education is a system of imposed ignorance, it's not hard to see why. Chomsky believed truly in the strength of people coming together and being creative. True democracy, according to him, includes space for the people to be free to detect liars, and when they are being coerced to do something, to challenge that. He makes a point that, quote, propaganda is to democracy what violence is to a dictatorship. In media, he describes propaganda filter models. The main one he spoke on was New York Times, calling it an elite media that helps set agendas. The New York Times is a publication that shapes history. Reporting accurate facts should be important and without all of the framing and hidden agendas. Bernays, the father of public relations, and the Freuds have used psychology to control the masses through their desires and fears. In the aftermath of this level of manipulation on the public psyche, Chomsky emerges with an almost holistic view of how to create a better world. So I pose to you the question, which method would you like to be under? And if you were in the top 20%, which would you prefer to use? Comment below and thanks for watching.